Hey everyone, and welcome to Security Live. Security Live is a show focused on AWS and AWS security partners, where we discuss all things security related, and sometimes not security related, that we face with our partners and with our customers. You can find us on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And you find us every other Tuesday, streaming at 8 a.m. Pacific time and 5 p.m. GMT time. And if you want to join in the conversation, please join in the comments section. My name is Margo. I am one of your co-hosts. I'm a security and compliance specialist SA for AWS. And normally I'm joined by Rob, but Rob cannot join us this week. And so it's really cool. I get to be joined by one of my American co-hosts, which is always great. Ryan, yay, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me, Margo. And hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm Ryan Orsi, and I'm in charge of a team known as the Cloud Foundation's Partner Specialists. It just means we have specialists in security and identity and governance and compliance and cloud ops and resilience. And we get to have a lot of fun helping AWS partners around the world solve some of those security challenges that we're here to talk about today. What are we talking about today, by the way, Margo?
Well, welcome to the EMEA show, first of all. It's very similar to the US show. We just take more vacation. Usually in August, we'll just stream from the beach. You know, it's just an EMEA thing that we have a tendency to do. And today, we actually have a returning guest, which is something I always enjoy. I think the last time they might have been on one of the US shows. And we have Sysdig joining the show. We have Alex Lawrence. He is the Director of Cloud Security Strategy. And Sysdig secures workloads in real time and integrates with services in AWS like ECS, Fargate, EKS. That's where I would see them. And then integrates as well with our threat detection instant response services like GuardDuty, Security Lake, and Security Hub. And only this afternoon, I was using them actually for Wireshark for my Reinforce demo, which I'm doing at Reinforce. And we're using Wireshark to look at the TLS handshake. And I was feeling very old because I was also using Wireshark in college. So it's actually really cool. It's really cool to kind of have that long relationship with a partner and kind of different personas.
Very awesome. I'd love to know anyone who's not used Wireshark, who's actually found us watching us today. That would be, such a
yeah. And it's definitely something to download and try. So we're looking forward to talking to Alex Lawrence from Sysdig.
Come on, Alex. There he is. Hello, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Hey, Alex. Do you want to do a better job introducing yourself than I have done?
I thought you did a fantastic job introducing me. Yeah, just Alex Lawrence, Director of Cloud Security, big old nerd, I think is the best way to put it. So
good type.
Director of Cloud Security, big old nerd.
Big old nerd, that's right. So here's a question for you, Margo. What was the name of Wireshark before it was Wireshark?
Oh,
the internet.
No Googling, Ryan.
He's like, Wireshark baby shark.
That's right. No, ethereal.
Cool.
That's right. Yeah. Someday we can tell you the whole story around that, but there's a whole thing about how its name got changed to Wireshark. So,
I mean, I'm interested. I don't know if Ryan's like,
go back. We're going. This is the Wayback Machine to the.
That's right.
Time frame, Alex. I think
something like that. Yeah. It the short story is that when Case Technologies got formed and they wanted to pull the product that direction, the place that was hosting Ethereal for its web like content distribution was making too much money on ads to give up the name, and so they had to rename the project.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
And what's happening with then StratoShark? Is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So StratoShark is Wireshark. If you go and download it today, go to stratoshark.org and you go click the download button. It'll look real familiar to anybody who's ever touched Wireshark. But what's different about it is it actually uses the open source libraries from Falco, kind of the project that Sysdig gave to the CNCF. To teach Wireshark how to look at system calls and how to look at cloud logs like CloudTrail, how to basically intercept anything that is a Falco plugin and then be able to parse it and use it inside of Wireshark. So all of the filtering syntax that you know and love from Wireshark, all of the right click and follow this thread stuff that exists in Wireshark, all of that same investigation workflow forensics, like deep dive, works with all sorts of other data sources now. Obviously, system calls are huge because then we can start looking at stuff happening in containers, on hosts, look for malicious activity, whatever it might be. I'm also really excited about the fact that it can intercept stuff like CloudTrail logs, because then I can go in and I can go, okay, well, I see that a bucket got made public. Let's go follow that thread of events and let's go figure out who made the bucket, who logged in, who, like, what role did they assume to be able to make those changes? And so it brings that entire Wireshark investigative power, but to the cloud native era of stuff. It's really, really cool.
I love the sense of confidence that Wireshark gave me back in the day as a recovering 802.11 Wi-Fi engineer person. You could look me up in my background and wonder, what's this guy talking about Wi-Fi suddenly? But it gave me such confidence to be able to understand what's
I get it.
I
get it. Yeah, I mean, I started my career deploying Cabletron, if you remember that name. They're Romobout R2s that had these PCM-CIA hot swappable Wi-Fi cards.
Yep.
And being able to deploy that across, an entire university campus. So I'm right there with you, Ryan.
Fantastic. And now fast forward to the era of cloud and really complex systems that are built in these environments. What kind of use cases kind of rise to the top? Like forensics or investigation of a security incident definitely sounds like a use case. But is there anything more kind of like an example you could give the audience here? I think might kind of bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, think about like what the cloud has done to us, right? It's wonderful. It lets us scale very, very fast. We can be able to build out all sorts of crazy applications natively with API calls and junk. But we've kind of lost a little bit of control, right? So if we use our Wireshark example, we used to be able to plug into a switch and be like, you're now a span port. Give me all of your packets. Show me everything going on across my infrastructure. You kind of can't walk into AWS's data center and just plug in, right? You can't go get that traffic anymore. That's not how it works.
You can try, but that's where I think our physical security comes into play.
One would hope that would come into play. And so if I can't plug into my infrastructure and get observability and get security data about what's going on, how do I do it? And so that's the fundamental problem that Sysdig has been trying to solve, right? And then that gets muddied by all sorts of other technologies, AI and all those other stuff that start showing up. And so in Sysdig's world, it was, okay, well, what is the least common denominator when we can't find the packet as our single source of truth anymore? And so it's like, well, we have to go to the workload. And so Sysdig set out as a tool that could instrument a kernel to grab system calls, right? Be able to go look at everything happening. That can tell us metrics, utilization, reliability information, stuff that SREs care about. So site reliability engineers. It also can tell us a bunch of security information, right? We can be able to see, what socket was opened, what files was accessed, was it something that was sensitive or not? And so from that telemetry source, it let us build a very rich set of tooling to be able to look across all of these things. And so then the other side of that was, well, okay, cool. We can do workloads. What about when people aren't running a workload? What if it's a Fargate task? What if it's a Lambda? What if it's an RDS? What do we do in those situations? And thankfully, people like Amazon have created kind of their version of a quote unquote system call, which I would argue is the CloudTrail log, right? Like everything you ever do in your cloud environment logs to CloudTrail. And so people often turn it on by default, right? That's what gets you compliant with a lot of specs, be it GDPR or HIPAA requirements or whatever. Insert your random framework for compliancy, right? They all basically say turn on CloudTrail. They don't tell you have to do anything with CloudTrail, but turn it on.
That's the trick. Yeah, what to check for what actual should you ever be, Margo, what is it, the pre-compliance stage of different companies out there, right? That have a lot of confidence that they've done the right controls. But if you stress test a lot of those controls, at least in my experience, stress test meaning show me compliance section 145-2 is actually met by this control and what the output is. Yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah.
How has generative AI changed, this runtime security use cases for you that you were just touching on there? Is it completely different now, or is it just the same, just a lot more generated data?
It's a good question. It's the same but different, so it's both. Right. I guess the way to think about it is that, what problem is AI solving for us as people, as technologists, as whatever you want to say. And I fundamentally fall into the camp that AI exists to solve the data lake problem, right? So the data lake problem being we generate ridiculous amounts of data. We have a ton of data, but we don't always know what's inside of that pool of data. We, as humans, we can't read it fast enough to understand all the nuances of it, but a machine can.
Yeah.
And so AI fundamentally solves the "I've got too much data. What does it mean? What can I do with it?" problem.
Well, I don't think you've worked at Amazon then, Alex. We can read docs super fast. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I have worked quite a bit with Amazon, and the documentation process that comes out from that is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
But you'll find, to your point, you'll find a limit in between the ears, right, Margo, of what we can absorb, what we can process, for sure.
That's right. And so, I mean, that's what AI is particularly good at. And so, if you think about it from a security perspective, I would venture any security person out there today, put it in the chat if you agree or disagree. But I am positive that they would all say they've got way too much information to understand. Right?
Yeah.
Think about the raw number of CVEs that get generated in a modern application, or the number of telemetry points that your site reliability engineer has to be able to parse through. Or even just like the sheer number of security events that products produce today. How do I know what's valuable? How do I know what I should ignore? How do I even know like what I should do in the next hour? And so AI is helping us solve that problem. Sysdig is leveraging it in that capacity. I would say, Amazon is always leveraging it in that capacity. It's helping us bring order to chaos.
Yeah, so Pete is saying there, it's gone across the screen, that people are sometimes using it for the sake of possibly using it and not examining what problem it is they want to solve. And often I think, the best practices, like kind of what are the problems I'm trying to solve, and your best practices around security, exactly as you were saying, like enabling CloudTrail, having that data, putting those controls in place still apply regardless of AI.
Absolutely. And I think if we think about like the way a lot of companies are looking at this, particularly like I can speak about Sysdig's use case. The product that we released is incorporated throughout the entire Sysdig experience these days. It's called Sysdig Sage, but it is an LLM implementation of the data set that we see. We took a little bit of time coming to market with it because we actually wanted to do it differently. We didn't want to just point it at a large documentation set and say, hey, I'm a natural language search engine. We actually taught it our API. And so we've been able to have Sage be a kind of an analyst light, so to speak, where you can go into a view in Sysdig. Let's say you're on the events page in Sysdig. You can actually ask Sage, what are the most important events I should be looking at right now? It'll contextually know where you're at in the application, and it will sift through all of the current events you're looking at, and it'll bring to bear the ones that are most important based off of criticality, what assets it's touching, what are all the kind of the things we see about this particular object. And then you can ask it to dive deeper into that particular event, like, well, what other events are related to it? What spawned this particular thing? And so it's helping you sift through that gigantic lake of data in a more meaningful way to be able to kind of get to root cause quicker, to get to understanding what I should be doing quicker, all that type of stuff. It's because we took the time to teach it how to work with Sysdig, not just how to read a bunch of docs.
And if I contrast that with the olden days, Alex, a security analyst, right, would be looking at events, probably from multiple security products or security sources, maybe some from AWS, maybe some from other, tools they've deployed in their environment. But there's no out-of-the-box correlation that a user event and an application event and a network event are somewhat correlated to an actual indicator of compromise. So there's no correlation to begin with. But it sounds like that's what you bring to the table, of course, is events from different sources correlated. And context is also typically missing unless someone is really on top of their tagging game with resources. But what application or what environment is prod versus test versus who knows what else, and what's the sensitivity level of the data that the application has access to? If it's just more or less throwaway data, okay, that's a little less risky than employee financial records, for example.
Yeah.
I think you're saying you bring the context, you bring the level of data sensitivity, and you have the correlation of different events together so that a human being doesn't have to go write a bunch of SQL queries and analyze a lot of different spreadsheets and CSV files.
That's right. We're trying to do a lot of that work up front for our user base so that they can get to like work faster, basically, right? There's nothing worse than generating a CSV of a bunch of stuff and then throwing it over the wall and saying, hey, is this somebody else's problem? Go fix it. And I'm going to check in with you every single day until that list is taken care of, right? Like that's not effective security, but that's what we're used to doing. And so we're trying to help change that.
So Hartstead in the chat is just raising the point, is there a concern here that maybe we might be getting soft? We might be losing our skill sets and handing everything over to AI. I think I'm paraphrasing what Hartstead has written, but that's essentially. So these investigative tasks, and I mean, there's a lot to be said here because I think we all agree, like somebody's deployed like Elastic Kubernetes service, they've got Security Hub, hundreds of findings, like it can be quite overwhelming. So you can really see what you were describing there, Alex, how that helps and directs a customer. Hey, you should be caring about this CVE, you should be caring about these events, let's do this. But are we at the same time losing skills? Is that a concern?
It's certainly a concern I think people have. I don't think it's one you necessarily have to be worried about per se, right? The tool is as effective as the user is to a degree. So if you're not asking it the right questions, if you're not asking it to look at things from the right perspective or analysis, it's not going to produce the results you need, right? And so, yes, we're not doing that, hours of investigation ourselves. We still need to understand that investigation process to be able to be effective in how we construct our query, be that quote unquote prompt engineer, how we do that stuff. And so, yeah, we're offloading some of those things, but we aren't necessarily doing it out of like a skill loss per se. You still have to fundamentally understand what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pete is saying AI is my assistant. It doesn't do my job.
Exactly. Like it's a tool to make us better.
Yeah. What is the biggest mistake you're seeing people make right now with AI and with their Kubernetes deployments and their security workloads? If I could give you a magic wand and I'm like, hey, Alex, we're just going to solve this problem right now, what would you be waving?
Well, maybe stop emailing me with just AI generated prompts. Outside of that,
I like the plus one that as well.
From a security perspective, honestly, it would be basically having a very cogent view of how your tool is leveraging AI, right? Like I think I saw one of the comments earlier. People just slap it on there to say we're doing AI, right? It's the hot topic. It's the thing people want to be involved in. And so they're doing anything they can to say, hey, we're AI too. So having a very methodical thought process about what your goal and strategy is as you implement your whatever insert AI thing, that's the thing I would fix, right? Put the time and effort and thought. Don't just react. Again, like in Sysdig's case, our AI stuff did not come out the minute LLMs became popular. We took some time and we thought about what did we want to solve and how would the Sysdig solution look for that. And so that would be my thing to fix, right? Be very thoughtful.
What to answer your question, Margo, you didn't ask me, but I'm just thinking out loud here. I feel like Alex and team have gotten they've ascended a mountain on just trying to understand like day in the life. This is job satisfaction scores for people in like a security operations center. Understanding what's a false positive or a true positive or what it's correlated to. I'd encourage like everyone listening, right? If you're spending time in multiple logs trying to understand if something's a true positive or false positive, you haven't quite adopted a tool. I don't know if AI is the center of all this or not, but just a tool like a Sysdig or something relatable to help you through that. Because I just feel like that keeps people like away from their dinner plates and their families at night, right? When they're stuck there trying to really chase this issue down. They don't know if it's an issue yet, but they've been told to investigate it. I just feel like that time to investigate, to figure out true positive, false positive is still kind of one of our like brush your teeth, security, hygiene things that everyone should be thinking about. Glad you're all innovating there, Alex. Like we need more help. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so one good example of that, just to kind of like hammer that point home, there's a single button in Sysdig that's called a runtime button, basically. Or it's called in use, I believe, is the marketing term we use for it. So think about CVEs and finding vulnerabilities in code and software. You can easily have hundreds and hundreds of CVEs per application, right? And so then the question for the development team or the QA team or whoever's responsible for fixing that stuff is, well, where do I start? One of the things that we've realized over time is that we have this very rich runtime telemetry source. It's looking at system calls. If I'm looking at system calls, I can correlate back to what library in an application generated that system call. So the in use button, when you click it, it basically says, oh, hey, okay, let's add the level of filtering on all of these CVEs that correlate to system calls. So instead of having maybe 100 CVEs in existence, I can tell you what 10 libraries that you're actually using in your application have CVEs. And so maybe that 100 or 200, 250 CVE list becomes 20 or 15, right? It doesn't mean you should ignore the other 200 CVEs, but it says tomorrow I should work on these 15 because they're the ones that are actually from the libraries that are being called. And then next week, I should remove those other 30, 40, 50 libraries that I'm never calling, so that when I go through my review cycle next month, I've gotten rid of all of that fluff and I don't have to deal with that in the future, right? It's about being very targeted and it's about saving time, right? Like, how can I use my resources that I have more effectively? And so it's marrying runtime sources, CVE sources, packages, container lists, like bringing all those things together to give you a pointed solution.
It's getting the chat. That's going down well, and it gives you an accuracy, like it gives you a guiding light, actually, to quote Pete, an accuracy and a speed to accuracy that maybe was like a longer leg before.
Exactly. It's honestly probably one of my absolute most favorite features, and it's nowhere near like the most complex thing in the world. It's taking all of our telemetry, all of our data sources, and using it to be more effective. And it's huge. Like if you start talking things like FedRAMP, which is the US government compliancy frameworks, or you start looking at DORA, or you start looking at like NIST 2 type things, and I need to have certain levels of CVE requirements taken care of. That reporting becomes more simplistic. The how do I fix becomes more simplistic, right? When I give it to the dev, they're not yelling at me for giving them a gigantic list of work to do, and they can't do their actual job, right? Like, and so it's kind of one of those like self-fulfilling prophecies where the more you do it and the more you leverage it, the easier it becomes, the less time it takes.
We're also going to earn more trust, as we say over here at Amazon, with those the devs and the security teams, right? The old DevSecOps kind of relationships in these companies. Why should I prioritize this? Well, you're telling them, well, this is actually live running right now in your production app. Here's proof.
Exactly.
That's very, very interesting, Alex. Hey, you mentioned compliance kind of quickly there, but I'm interested in a little bit more on how your product is used by folks in the risk and compliance space. I mean, if we, at least in my team, we're helping partners around the world. They're with AWS, but there's always typically like some sort of a project going on with an end customer, either migrating into AWS or modernizing something that's there. Compliance is one of the first things that pops into their minds, right? From the business leadership perspective. What tools do I need to cover my bases, and how do I prove that I truly am compliant? Looks and kind of sounds like Sysdig's platform is one of the ways to help solve that last piece. Like, how do I know I'm truly compliant? But curious to hear what you've experienced out there.
Yeah, so that is a conversation I have just about every single day with customers around the globe, right? Like it's always top of mind. It's always funded, right? And so it's something that people are willing to throw money at to be able to fix a problem, get a solution, whatever it might be. And I firmly believe that it falls into kind of compliancy falls into two categories, right? There's kind of like the passive control compliance, preventative control compliance stuff. And then there's the detective or the active control compliance stuff, right? There's two sides of that equation. It's really, really kind of, I want to say easier, but it's much more straightforward on the prevent side, right? Like, okay, I've ensured my configuration's correct. I've made sure all of my buckets are closed down. I've made sure that MFA is enabled on my user accounts, that you can't log in as the global root admin. I've done all of those things, right? I've checked my compliancy boxes. That's the stuff that I think we're all very acutely aware of, that we know we need to solve. And there's a bunch of tools that solve that problem, Sysdig included. The other half of that is what I would argue is a little bit harder side, right? So if the preventative controls are wearing your helmet, like when you go skiing or something, that would mean that experience and knowledge is the detective control side, right? Like, I just started skiing, I should wear a helmet so I don't get hurt. Should also be pretty obvious that I just started skiing, I'm wearing my helmet, but I probably shouldn't go down the black diamond on my very first run. It takes a certain level of kind of experiential knowledge to know what you're prepared and ready for. And so that detective control side is kind of that other thing, right? I've got data. What does that data mean? Do I see something that is relevant to me or not, right? And so sifting through your events live as they relate to your compliancy framework is that kind of intelligence side of the house. And so, do I have live violations of PCI? Do I have live violations of HIPAA, NIST, DORA, whatever the thing is? And then how do I know if those are in scope of an application that is compliance, regulated? And how do I know what I should be looking at today, right? So that's the side that we very heavily focus on, right? That's the runtime, that's the real-time side. And everything Sysdig does thinks about this concept of, well, how do I do this in real time? And we care so much about that because in the cloud, threats move ridiculously fast, right? If we go back to our olden days, we had hours of time to deal with, like, say, lateral movements or things that would just sit and persist in the environment. In the cloud, we put out a cloud native security usage report every single year. That dwell time has shifted from 3-4 hours to less than 5 minutes.
Wow.
So if my attacks are moving in my environment in sub 5 minutes, preventative controls are great. I need to also know when they actually happen, because if I'm starting an investigation process an hour later, I'm already too late. And so we try to keep that top of mind.
Yeah, that kind of acceleration over time. I mean, for sure, the bad actors are using automation. Maybe they're using AI, but think about it. Like, it's not exactly humanly possible to get into a foreign environment in a system and not spend dozens of minutes at least, like trying to figure out where you are, what's available to you, what's next door. If you're doing that in 5 minutes or less, I mean, you're using something else to help you out for sure.
Right. Like we all love the cloud. This is why we're here on this show, right? Like it has done wonders for us, but it has completely changed the game and what security looks like. And so we need to evolve with it. That's really what it fundamentally comes down to.
Speaking of evolve, we have to evolve the show here, Alex, because we're running short.
All right.
Gosh, I feel like we could keep going forever, and I do need to know if it was a setup between you and Margo, because she does have a skiing injury. And your analogy, I was thinking, oh, too soon, too soon.
I had no idea.
Yeah, my skiing career was finished 3 weeks ago, but yes.
I just went with it because my daughter's a huge skier, and we just returned her skis yesterday for her rental this year. So.
Oh, fantastic.
It's okay. I'll just have a bit of a cry over here between the two.
Well, I'm sorry, Margo. I didn't mean to rub salt in the wound.
She nailed it like a pro. Good news, she's going to be fine, everybody. Margo is super tough.
Yeah.
Alex,
all right.
Sysdig, thank you for joining us. And folks, please do go look for their ebook, Using Runtime Insights for Effective Cloud Security with Sysdig and AWS. Margo and I will be right back for the next episode of Security Live.
Thank you so much.
Gotta hand it to our producers for the jazzy tunes, Margo. It just gets you going.
Do the dance.
We are a couple of dancing people on your screens today, and joining us. This is the Security Live show. We come to you live every other Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. This is a show where we get to dig into security topics and cloud security, all sorts of security topics included. And we solve some of those security challenges with our AWS partners. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ryan Orsi, and I run a team here at AWS known as the Cloud Foundation's Partner Specialists. Just means we work with companies around the world in security use cases, identity, compliance, governance. We get to have a lot of fun out there helping to really dig into some of these challenges. And I'm honored that Margo let me on her show. This is the EMEA time slot for Security Live, but I'm joined by Margo, our host.
Yeah, my name is Margo. I'm a security and compliance specialist SA based in EMEA, and I work closely with our partners on customer sites. So it's really cool to get to chat to them as well in this show. And Ryan, I think, are you doing, just to mention, will you be here in person at the London Summit in a couple of weeks? Will you be?
Yes. I'll be. There's a AWS Partners Summits on the 29th. I'll be there. We'll be streaming Security Live from the summits, and then there's the main summits the following day, I think April 30th as well.
When you'll be with Rob again, our colleague Rob, EMEA Rob, as we like to call him.
Yes, we're going to miss you, Margo. We will try our best. We'll hold the torch for Security Live in Europe.
Yes, but the next streaming live, maybe at Reinforce, I don't know. But anyway, we'll be there together in person. Who do we have coming on today?
I believe that we have a company, NETSCOUT'S, a very interesting AWS partner, digging into perimeter protection concepts and how that works in the cloud. Scott from NETSCOUT, are you on, sir? Love to welcome you to Security Live.
And we've had Scott.
Ryan, Margo. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. No, it's great to be here.
Yeah, and hey, Scott, for the audience that may not know you yet, but they will very soon, would you mind kind of introducing yourself, how you got to where you are? It's always a fun story to hear about, like, was cybersecurity such a straight line as a career path? It never is. Then what you're into there at NETSCOUT?
Yeah, no, good question. So I started at Arbor Networks back when it was forming, about 2001, when DDoS attacks were first becoming a thing and really affecting the nascent internet at that time. And we grew there. I had a hand in protecting some of the Olympics, some of other kind of global events as we grew. And then in 2015, we were acquired by NETSCOUT, and that was a great fit because NETSCOUT was a network visibility company, and DDoS is all about network visibility. And so since then, we've been continuing to grow and develop our capabilities to do DDoS protection in hopefully any environment.
Oh, awesome. And Margo, it's your show. You got to make the call. Is DDoS like AI for the acronym police here? Does it get a pass? Everyone know what DDoS is, so we have to spell it out.
Yeah, that's actually, so we have the acronym swear jar, where we're not allowed to use acronyms. It's mainly been put in place to manage me, Scott, because I was just vomiting letters in every show, and the producer was like, "Woman, you have to pay for this." It was like $1 an acronym. I don't know. I think DDoS is a bit like AI, right? Like where it's kind of like it's nearly a word in itself. It's.
I mean, if we want to use up all the rest of our time, I could say distributed denial of service attacks every time I want to use it, and then we'll get about 5 sentences more, and the half hour will be up. So
And we, if I don't see you in London the 29th of the Partner Summit, we're doing Security Live in person. We could also see you perhaps at Reinforce in June in Philadelphia. We'll be streaming Security Live there, where we'll actually be passing money back and forth to each other for the acronym swear.
For the swearing. On DDoS, given that we've used the acronym, do you find, Scott, that customers' conversations are navigating now always towards zero trust? Because we have acronyms and then we also have buzzwords. And I do sometimes find customers are talking about DDoS, and next thing they're weaving in zero trust, and the whole conversation has morphed, like a great big amoeba into something else. What are your experiences in NETSCOUT there?
Yeah, I mean, zero trust is a big part of that. Part of the problem with not the problem with zero trust, but one of the issues is that if you're using Zero Trust and that infrastructure is inaccessible to you, you are effectively locked out of everything, which is a pretty serious situation. So that is definitely one element we think about when it comes to DDoS. And then as part of that, we also need to make sure that when we are inspecting and deciding what traffic on the network may be part of a DDoS attack, that we are protecting that Zero Trust traffic and ensuring that we're not disturbing it so that the normal users can continue acting normally on the network and accessing all the things they need to do.
And how do you orchestrate all that, Scott? So, I mean, to your point, should something accidentally get like traffic accidentally get prevented, that could be a serious disruption in operations. But I'm sure that, I'm sure you have all the safeguards and that the processes in place for your platform. But how do you orchestrate this?
That is a great question. And it does become complicated. In fact, and this is probably the number one thing our customers ask us about, because if you've been doing anything on the internet for any length of time, you have some set of services that are internet facing and you have some kind of DDoS protection for those. Now, as you move those to the cloud, you're faced with a choice where I have to completely change my protection stance around DDoS, use different tools that work in different ways and that I may not understand. Or in an ideal world, I would be able to carry those same tools with me and have them run in a coordinated way across both my cloud and anything I have left on premise, and be able to apply the same options, the same protections, and get the same visibility across all of that. And so that's always been our goal, is we treat DDoS protection as an application. And so you can run that application in your network, you can run it in the cloud, and our orchestration layer treats them all the same way. So you have a single pane of glass, you can see, I have this protection happening over here, I have this application running over there that needs protecting, but they all look the same, they all work the same, and so I can have a coordinated strategy, even though I'm running in a very different environment in say, AWS. And in fact, it was AWS that kind of led the way in this with the ingress routing feature that we make use of in order to steer the traffic to the DDoS protection. They're still, I think you guys are still kind of the head of the game there in terms of the ability to integrate that kind of protection into a cloud stack. And that's been really helpful for us as well, because we obviously want to protect all of our customers as they move things to the cloud.
I think this is where I've actually worked with NetScout the most, actually, when I'm dealing with customers and, they're happy, they love us, and they're deploying workloads, but for different reasons. Sometimes it's regulatory, sometimes it's their own internal governance. They need workloads that need to remain on premise, or it might be the same workload and they have a footprint on premise and they have a footprint with us. And then when it comes to, we use this phrase, single pane of glass, but it's amazing trying to understand a finding or trying to understand an event and it being the same experience on premise and in the cloud is very important when it comes to reacting in a timely manner. And of course, we have AI and everything that helps us there, but it's also very important when it comes to expressing yourself to your leadership and going, hey, we understood what happened and this is how we're going to mitigate it in the future. Or this is what we've put in place with our partners. And I really find as a partner with AWS, this is kind of where NetScout and AWS come together really well. I'm always thrilled when I know they're using you guys and we've got this kind of single pane of glass across on-premise.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's always been our goal. And, the ability to take a software application approach to it has really been a strength for us because it makes us portable in that way. We're not tied to hardware acceleration or anything that would have to stay on premise, which is nice. DDoS is a network problem and the network looks very different. And this is kind of part of the conversation you were having in the previous session with Alex from Sysdig. So I really like the fact that we can kind of hide that from the users, as you're saying, and try to make it look seamless.
We've said look a couple, like the word look has come up a few times. I'm just wondering, what does a DDoS attack look like, Scott? Like we know conceptually, but suppose it's actually happening. Like what does an analyst or an operator at a company look at physically with your platform, with AWS, whatever they're looking at to detect that, oh my gosh, I'm under attack. The number of requests are beyond what they can conceive, and something is abnormal here.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do have something I can show you real quick if that would help kind of make it real. And one of the things I do want to say is, the goal of finding DDoS attacks should not be that I'm sitting here looking at a screen and waiting to see a spike in a graph that tells me I have a DDoS attack. Our goal is to detect that up front and let you know. But this is that single pane of glass we were talking about, and I have a few simple different resources that I'm protecting configured here. And so what would normally happen is I would see an alert pop up in my central SEM or source system, but that alert would correspond to a DDoS attack. So in this case, I have a DDoS attack that I've started against myself. Now, this is a very simple one, but it could be something very complex. And we are going to start by giving you a recommendation for what to do. We want to try to hold your hand through the process so that it's not you just figuring out, oh, I have a DDoS attack. What kind of attack is this and what do I do when that happens? And so we give you a very simple workflow, but this is optional. If you like the workflow, if you like the options we're presenting to you, I'll show you at the end how you can check a box and say, just do this for me in the future. And then you don't have to worry about it. But we can take this recommendation, we can apply it to everything in that application group. If we think, I might see attacks against other resources in the same place, or if I want to focus on just the thing that's under attack, I can pull that out and treat it separately with more aggressive traffic filtering that I don't have to apply to everything else. And then I get the recommendations here, and I'm free to change these. If I decide I don't like what you're recommending, I can edit this and do it differently. But usually we'll go with the recommendation, and here I can see this is the targeted host. This is what we're protecting, and then I can click next. And here's where I can say, in the future, just do this for me. And I can add an audit trail message.
As you were doing that, what's an example of where someone would actually not prefer what you're recommending and they want to customize the remediation step there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, for this kind of attack, it's a fairly simple attack, so there's probably not much they might customize. However, you can see, for example, we have an option here that says except on ports, and we have port 25 there by default. So there might be, say, another application port that we know doesn't work well with this protection because of the nature of the traffic or the nature of the behavior on that port. And if that's not a port that's being attacked, then I can maybe choose to not apply this protection to that port. And maybe that's a standard policy that I have for that particular application group or application. So that's a simple example. There may be more advanced ones where I want to add additional filtering because I've been dealing with this attack over the course of days, since attackers can be persistent, and I've already found something that I know works well with this in addition. Or, again, there might be other options I want to turn on or off. Generally, though, we don't see much need for that. Our recommendations are pretty good. They come from a lot of experience, so we normally wouldn't change that. But that's a good example.
I was just going to say, given the exposure to the kinds of attacks you all have seen at NetScout there and distributed DDoS attacks, I mean, it would seem probably on the rare side for someone to customize their response.
Yeah, pretty much. And also, you were asking earlier about the orchestration that we have. Part of that orchestration is knowing in advance that there are particular resources that you want to have special handling for. Things you never want to block, things maybe you always want to block, things you want to limit in different ways, maybe by country or just by source address or something else. And so that is behind the scenes here. You're not seeing that, but that's already been set up. And that policy can be orchestrated, as we were talking about, from this same pane of glass everywhere that you have protection running. And so that may be already taking care of some of those exceptions that you would otherwise want to make.
Is there a notion of, and I'm sure there is, learning from the attacks? Because here, you're detecting attack. Is there a notion of like passing that information back to the customer where you can say, hey, put this into your preventative guardrails because these are the kind of attacks now we're recently seeing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there definitely is that notion of learning from attacks. And we do that in a couple of ways. There's a notion of global learning. So we do collect attack data, assuming the customer agrees to share it. And we collect that in a cloud-based pipeline, also running in AWS, as it turns out, where we analyze that data and we push out threat updates through our feed to let all of our customers know, hey, we're seeing this kind of attack. Here's where it's coming from. Here's what the attack traffic looks like. Everything should be looking for this and knowing how to block it. So we definitely do that. And then locally, yes, we provide a lot of data, and we do have a feedback loop running that does attempt to learn, hey, we applied these protections. It blocked some of the attack, but this bit is still getting through. We're now seeing that, and here's a new set of recommendations that go with that. And so you can see here that we've started to block, which is the red creeping in on the right side of the graph here, this attack based on the recommendations. This is the escalation group. So this is only affecting the specific target of the attack. The other file servers in this case are not even being impacted by this because they're not under attack and we're not blocking anything for them. And then we can give you some pretty useful data. Speaking of that kind of consistent global visibility about what country is this traffic coming from, what kinds of services are being impacted. In this case, none, because it's not directed to a particular service.
Yeah.
And that gives you that kind of useful response. And this would look the same whether it was something running in my own data center or something running in AWS.
Oh, interesting. And he's got in a DDoS attack, as a visual, you're sort of trying to block and stop and kind of like delete or throw bad traffic in the trash. But that trash bin can fill up really quickly, and then your remediation can start to fail. What do you have, like guardrails or systems to go, such that your trash bin doesn't become too full, basically?
Oh, that is a great question, Ryan. You clearly know your DDoS. So DDoS is always a bottleneck problem, and it's kind of like the old adage about show me a 10-foot wall and I'll show you an 11-foot ladder. You show me a 10 gigabit link and I'll show you an 11 gigabit DDoS attack.
Right.
And so you're always going to have those bottlenecks that can fill up, and you need to be able to escalate above those. Now, in the case of AWS, perhaps Shield is seeing that as the attack gets bigger. Shield is probably going to be blocking more and more of it on a volumetric basis, because that's why you have Shield. But in the case that it doesn't, we actually do have native signaling that can go out to a cloud DDoS service that maybe then can redirect your traffic, take it in, and do more large-scale blocking than you can handle in a particular environment, whether that's in a data center or in a cloud environment. Doesn't really matter. There's always going to be that bottleneck, unless it's something that maybe Shield is already handling, because of course you have the cloud scale there. But that's always been the point where no matter where you are in the DDoS world, you need that escalation ability. And that's why from day one, we've baked that cloud signaling capability, which is what we call it, into the product to be able to do that.
Bit of a broad, vague question for you, Scott, so take it as you will. We often talk about generative AI with our security partners and how they're using generative AI. But what are you seeing out there in terms of generative AI being used by the bad actor, by the people creating these DDoS attacks? Is the nature of DDoS attacks changing?
That's also a very good question. So there are a few different categories of DDoS attack, and I think this affects that a bit differently. So at a basic level, you have your volumetric attacks. And every year we're seeing 7, 8, 9 new kinds of attack vectors there, which typically involves exploiting some kind of opening in a service that's deployed on the internet to generate DDoS traffic that's directed to your target. That's called reflection amplification. And so it's possible that people are using AI to help analyze these applications or carry out tests to see if they're exploitable. Now, we don't know for sure that they're doing that. It's just a possibility. Certainly, even before AI, people were able to discover these things on their own anyway. And then you get into the more sophisticated attacks, like application layer attacks. And that's where I think we'll see more AI impact, because with those, you actually do have more room in the application payload to put different kinds of content and try to trigger the application in different ways. And that's where we see AI being used more to maybe automate some of those attacks and more rapidly change them so that they work around the defenses or aren't doing the same thing all the time, which makes it easier to identify the bad behavior. So that's where I think we're going to see the biggest impact from AI, although really that stuff's already happening and it's being driven by people today. I don't think we're yet at AI that is as good as a person, but the one thing the AI can do is maybe speed that up and automate it a little more rapidly. And that's where, we have the concern, and that's why we have this feedback loop we were talking about to keep looking at the traffic and keep seeing what else is getting through that we need to get on top of. But yeah, AI is certainly a concern.
It's got, we definitely see the way I kind of like try to tie this next phrase back to something we can understand, the cyber kill chain of the steps that an attacker would take, like reconnaissance, figure out what kind of doors and windows they could get into, what kind of CVEs exist, weaponization, actually produce the exploit, deliver some kind of a payload, actually the exploit process. We definitely see the speed of those steps being completed accelerating quickly. And we're thinking, we were talking earlier in a different episode about the average time for an attacker once inside an environment to then move laterally. So get access to another system that's adjacent to the initial victimized system, if you will. That's down in the less than 5 minutes. In some studies from our other endpoints partners, that's under 1 minute already as of last month. So 5 minutes, 1 minute, whatever it is, it's in single digit minutes. And we're just thinking, through 2-3 years ago, it was in dozens of minutes or hours even for lateral movement to occur. So we know that these tools, it could just be automation, but it's accelerating so quickly. Is it automation also powered with a little bit of AI in there? To your point, morph the attack quicker, try more things than what a human or a human plus Python code could be doing on their own. But it's good to know that for NetScout here, for the folks watching, you do have your escalation path. Should bad traffic start to fill the trash bin that you're in charge of, you have another trash bin you can pull in the garbage truck. Margo, in the UK, you have to tell me, like, what's a garbage truck called over there? Is it a bin? Is it rubbish? I don't know.
Yeah, rubbish guys, the rubbish men. The rubbish men are coming.
On bin day, right?
Yes, exactly. Bin day, my mum's favorite day.
Ryan, I love what you're saying there, and it's just reminding me of something, which is that if you're in security, the first thing you have to do is know your threat surface, right? And so it's always key to have the visibility to see that activity that you're talking about, that lateral movement. And we actually see something similar with DDoS, where we have talked to enterprises running very large scale environments in, say, Amazon, and they are seeing attacks not just from the internet, but from other partner VPCs that they have private connections to within the cloud environment. And that's the DDoS equivalent of that lateral movement you're talking about. And so that's part of why having DDoS protection, making sure that's monitoring those connection points, because that's not part of your threat surface, is really critical. And sometimes people forget to even think about that as an avenue for those attacks to get in. And similarly, going from the cloud environment over private VPC links back to your data center, same kind of thing. Attacks from that compromised cloud environment have a direct path now into your back office, into your back door. And if you don't look at that, if you don't have protections on that, then you could get caught out.
Solid call out, Scott. That's sort of like the perimeter. This is a conversation my partner specialists have around the world with different companies. They'll hear a phrase like the perimeter is dead, or the perimeter doesn't exist in the cloud. It's just been compartmentalized in different areas. To your point, private VPC connections, direct connect connections. Those are all, like, quote unquote authorized, trusted connections. But if you're implementing a true zero trust kind of concept in your environment, you trust nothing, right? And I like what you're saying there. Make sure you're thinking about watching traffic wherever it might be coming from, and keep that sort of trust nobody mentality of zero trust, right? And inspect it and add it into your telemetry sources that go into your threat detection processes. If you're using security information event management, I almost said it. If you're using a SIM tool to do that for you, awesome. I couldn't do an acronym swear on Margo's show.
Oh, I snuck one in there too. You're reminding me now. And thank you for reminding me that I completely let Margo down by not mentioning this when she brought up zero trust at the beginning. So I'm glad we got back to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, it's because it comes up a lot, right? You're talking about DDoS, and the next thing you're in is zero trust conversation, and they come up hand in hand sometimes.
Exactly.
So what's next, Scott? I mean, is it? I can fully appreciate the comfort level of people that might have something still on premises, or for regulatory reasons, they have to have that hybrid style environment, and there's something in the cloud, and you give them a nice, consistent view, and for their staff can learn one thing. They can have one set of run books and playbooks, not two. So you're really simplifying just like the basics of security hygiene for sure, and that you bring that DDoS protection in for folks. You're in product management here. I'm a recovering PM myself. What's coming up next
on your recovery?
Yeah. Too many stories and acceptance criterias and stand-ups, but that's all in my past. What's coming up next that wouldn't get you in too much trouble for talking about?
No, good question. So I think it's really going back to that notion that we need to take our expertise at what to do when you're attacked and use some of these new technologies like AI to make that more nimble, make that more comprehensive. There can still be areas where the attackers have figured out an avenue that isn't yet something people analyze, and we think AI can really help fill in some of those gaps. And that's what we're really focused on, is how do we take this to the next level so that, to your point, the person who's just trying to deploy some applications in the cloud and service their users isn't having to worry about learning DDoS and learning what to do when these attacks happen. They've got something that can figure that out for them and just do it, and they don't have to worry about it. That's always our goal. And obviously, as security advances, we need to fill in some of those additional gaps with some of the newer attacks.
Scott, that's been so cool. And it's been so cool having you on the show. And you were with us at Reinforce last year, isn't that right? I remember correctly.
That was
really fun. I really hope we can do the same again. Any chance you can make it over to London and see Ryan live? He uses way more acronyms live. We only caught him out once there.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm definitely going to try.
April 29th, look for the AWS Partners Summits. We're there in person, Scott. Happy to get you on.
Love it, and love London.
And if we miss you there, we'll see you at Reinforce.
Sure.
What are dates for that, Margo? Pop quiz.
So I want to say it's around about 17, 18 of June. Sorry for being inexact. I don't know if somebody's Googled there quickly, or maybe in the chat someone can help us out and throw it up. But it's around about that week in June, the 17th, 18th, 19th, that week. And yeah, and I do remember, Scott, you being there last year, and it was very cool. And it would be really awesome to see you there.
I would love to be there. It's a great event.
And Scott, as we're kind of coming to the end of the show, we need to ask you a very difficult journalistic question. I'm sure you've been properly trained to receive such fast pitch hardballs here, to use a baseball term. But what's the favorite place for vacation? You don't have to name the exact name, but is it tropical? Is it cold? Is it mountainous?
Good question. I love Spain. Anytime I can go to Spain, I am a happy man. Anywhere in Spain, really, whether it's Barcelona or the southern coast or Madrid. I just love everything about it. It's always so relaxing, and the people there really know how to embrace life, and good food, good wine, just hanging out with friends. It's great.
So you prefer dinner at like 11 p.m. is what you're telling me?
I am one of the first ones in the restaurant. Usually, I won't lie, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's really cool. Sometimes our security solution architects from Spain get upset and angry. They can get really passionate when the Spanish accent is creeping in, and yeah, it's a whole other level. And by the way, thank you so much, Pete. Pete has just confirmed it's June 16th to June 18th, Reinforce 2025 in Philadelphia.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Pete.
Perfect.
And Scott from NetScout, thank you, sir, for being on Security Live. Folks, if you didn't see the address, look for the NetScout AWS partnership website. It's a great bit of resources and more information to follow up with on everything NetScout and AWS. Margo and I, or Margo and Rob, we'll see you next time, every other Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific. What is that in GMT? 3 to 4 p.m.? 5
p.m. GMT time. But it was really confusing last month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see you in London.
See you next time. See you in London, folks.
Thank you both so much.